3 WATD Fantasy Draft. Quinn Kelly, Johnny Rourke, Brendan Connolly, and we are back again off of another fun week, another week of big scoring, and we bring it right back and continue on. It's been a lot of fun. Uh, Defensive picks have been really solid. The quarterback play has been great. There have been a ton of great games all over the South Shore to get us rolling so far this season. So we're excited. We're going to keep it going. We got two big games on the WATD Sports Network this weekend, and we're excited for those. I'm sure some players in either of those games will come off the board, but yeah, we're excited to get it rolling. All right, we are going to rotate the draft order this week again. So that puts me in the one spot, Johnny two, Brendan three. And with that, let's just dive right into it. Let's get to it. Week three, WATD Fantasy Draft. I'm going to take to the board, and I'm going to go first and foremost with a guy who has torn it up through 2 weeks of the season. Uh, Last week, I went with Ryan Solomini as one of my running backs, and he was one of those guys you pointed out, Johnny, maybe a little bit of a cheeky pick. He's listed as a running back. He plays out of the backfield, but he kind of does it all for Abington. Similar type guy here going off the board, first overall for me. He's listed as a wide receiver. I'm going with Wyatt Goyette out of Middleborough for my first pick. A guy that just does it all for them, runs the ball, catches the ball, a big factor in their offense right now for Pat Kingman's group. It seems like it's get Wyatt the ball however they can. They're going up against a DY team that's coming off of a two-score loss to Rockland last week. I think this is a good matchup for Middleborough. I think this is a good matchup for Wyatt Goyette. So I'm taking him week one or week three here, first off the board. All right, Johnny.
Okay. Let's get into it here. Week three. I'm gonna go. I'm right off the rip. I'm gonna go quarterback. Team that we've seen have success here early. I'm gonna go Abraham Cornett from Randolph. Just a guy who's able to command their offense. They've been high flying. I am kind of waiting for them to have a real test. I think so far I don't think they have in my eyes. But I think Abraham is a really solid player, and he's a guy that always goes out and executes.
They've been they've been flat out dominant so far. Um, and yeah, I mean, is that test going to come Thursday night against the High School of Commerce? I don't know. I would tend towards probably not. Uh, but that's all the better for the WATD fantasy draft. They're going to get tested plenty once they get to league, right? Like we saw that Cohasset team this week. They're very good. Mashpee obviously was in the Super Bowl last year. They lose a lot, but they're still going to be super competitive. Randolph's going to get tested at some point this season, and I think they're probably going to be up to the test. All right, Brendan.
Surprised this guy hasn't gone off the board yet, but I think this is a chance for him to go off early in this game. I'm going to go with the wide receiver. I'm going to go with Eric DeLima out of North Quincy. North Quincy has just been putting up points every single week, it feels like, and he's been one of the catalysts. This is another chance for it. They might not have to rely on him in the second half, but I feel like Braintree is I wouldn't say an easy matchup, but they've been struggling to this point, and I feel like offensively, North Quincy has just done the complete opposite, and he's been one of their main guys. So I'm going to go with DeLima.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that he maybe hasn't come off yet is we weren't sure what we were going to see from the passing game for North Quincy so far this season. And it's not quite, Mikey Galligan level right now, but it's been very, very good. And I think way better than expected at this point in the season. Eric DeLima is a huge reason why. I think that's a group that there was more talent waiting in the wings, getting ready to step up when the seniors from last year moved on than I think we realized. I think it's a really talented group, of good offense. And you said it, Brennan. He's been putting up points, so good pick. All right, I'm gonna go to the running back room, and I'm gonna take a team that take a player from a team that much like last year is off to a great start. They were a bit of a surprise last year. This is now 2 years in a row that they've been really, really good through their non-league schedule. They've got another non-league game coming up. I'm going to go with Austin Dewhurst out of East Bridgewater going up against Nauset this week. It's his show this year, and I think he's just supremely talented. I mean, I think he's really, really good. I think they've got a favorable matchup this week, and I expect him to kind of keep rolling in this one. We saw him get hurt last year, and it was just a different kind of ball game for East Bridgewater as a team. Certainly kind of came right when they hit the hard part of their schedule, but also like it was noticeably different looking offense after he went down. He's 1 year older, 1 year better this year. He's a huge piece of it. He gets the lion's share of the carries, and I think he's going to have a big game. All right, Johnny.
Well, yeah, we got some good matchups this week, so I'm kind of going back and forth on a couple guys. I know the name and I'm gonna butcher it, I just know, but I'm gonna go to that Severian Everett matchup. I'm gonna go Dave Chivagato. Uh I think that's correct.
I
But
think you got
I mean,
it.
he's regardless is an extremely talented player. They're coming off the bye. They had worked Fiend on the road. They're going back to the Hawk Bowl to face Everett. That's always, it doesn't matter if the two teams are any good. That's always just one you have circled. So I think they're going to look to let the ball fly early, kind of get that passing game going, and Dave's a guy that's going to do that.
Yeah, I mean he's a super talent. I think they're going to be a little bit more focused on the air this week than they were in week one. Um, and yeah, listen, they're only playing seven this year. They're not playing eight, so they're going to need to make statements. There's going to be an emphasis on two-score margin of victory for them. It's not going to be an easy matchup against Everett. It never really is, but I think that they're going to rely on Dave Shivagato this week to get the passing game going for his quarterback. So good pick, Johnny. All right, Brennan.
Well, Quinn, you stole my second pick. I was looking at that Durst player, and he's had a great season so far, and they're playing a good matchup this week against Nauset. So take that one right off. But I'm going to look at another one. And I'm going to go with Tyler Gardner Harris, keeping it with the running backs out of Archie's. I think they also have a good matchup against Aponequid, who has been struggling this season defensively. And I feel like they're going to take the lead behind Hudson Garrity, and then they're going to rely on him in the second half.
Yeah, I love this. I think it's an underrated piece of why Archie's is going to be dangerous this year is that they have a really good ground game too, right? Like obviously Hudson Garrity's going to grab the headlines for them this year. He's going to be the story. He's going to be the guy that everybody's watching, and he is truthfully what allows their ceiling to be so high. But the fact that they're not going to have to just put it all on his shoulders, they're going to be able to move the ball on the ground makes them all the more dangerous. And Tyler Gardner Harris had a great week one. He's going to be nice and rested coming off of a bye this week, so right back into it. I think he's probably poised for a pretty big week. All right, that puts me back to the podium. I'm going to go with my quarterback here, and I'm going to go over to Pembroke and take Anthony Pento. Kind of thrown into the starting role last year, maybe a year early. We saw that a couple of different teams had a similar situation across the South Shore, and it only works out to your benefit the next year, right? Here's a kid who showed flashes last year. I think he's really talented, and they've got a matchup against Norton that I think they should be able to take care of business in, and I expect them to let him go, let him get going, let him get rolling in this game, and try to springboard it into league play for the Titans. So I'll take Anthony Pento. All right, Johnny, back to you.
I'm gonna go get a running back. I'm gonna go to Silver Lake for this one. I'm gonna go with Nolan Dickinson. A guy that we've seen have some success here in the first 2 weeks on South Shore matchups. They go a little bit out of the South Shore to Arlington, I should say they host Arlington, but that's an interesting matchup for me. I think he's able to get going in that game, and they're gonna rely heavily on him.
Yeah, we saw last week against Cohasset, obviously saw him in person. He's really talented. And we saw he had a great season last year. It was a frustrating game against Cohasset, just as simple as that. Like they just couldn't really get the ground game going. Cohasset was able to really get things going in the trenches and get some pressure. And, I thought it just was a struggle for Nolan Dickinson. But I would say that only motivates him going into a matchup against an Arlington team that I think they should be able to take care of business against. Arlington's 1-1, but their first win of the season came against Arlington Catholic, who's definitely not really there right now as a program. They just lost to Stoneham, a D6 team last week. So I love the matchup for Silver Lake, and I love Nolan's chances in this one. So good pick, Johnny. All right, Brendan, back to you.
There's going to be a couple of shootouts on the South Shore this week, and I feel like one of them is going to be this Duxbury Hanover game. Two teams that both came up short against very tough squads last week, and they're both going to be looking and they're going to be hungry for a win. So I'm going to go with Brady Rhinesmith as my quarterback this week out of Duxbury. I feel like this is a chance for him to air it out and really get his numbers up.
Yeah, you know, Bretton, you had eyes on the matchup in Silver and not Silver Lake in Situate this past week. What did you see from Brady this week? This
I
past week?
saw a guy who can definitely air the ball out. He can find incredible. He throws dimes. Let's just say that when he's on, he can find great passing and he can hit his receivers in stride. Um, he's got a gun. This kid can throw. So I'm going to be looking for him to have big numbers this week, especially against a team in Hanover that, frankly, I thought was about to pull out a win against Hingham. They lost in heartbreaking fashion. This is going to be a good one, and I feel like it's going to be back and forth. And this is going to be a chance for him to really shine.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a live arm. I think we saw him week one. One of the big things with him, I felt like, was can you mix in the change up a little bit? It kind of felt like it was one speed, and sometimes, you need a little more feathering than just the fastball. But I think that that's something that with each passing week is going to become more comfortable for him. And you said, I mean, he's super, super accurate. He's super talented, and he's got a fantastic receiving core this week. This is going to be a really fun matchup. When you look at like who's on the back end of the defense for Hanover, I think it's going to be a lot of fun watching the Duxbury receivers tangle with Hanover's defensive backfield. And I think Brady Rhinesmith it is going to be asked to do a lot this week, and certainly going to be motivated coming off of a second straight loss to Situate. So good pick,
And
Brennan.
not to be biased here, I think Situate might be the toughest defense they will face all season long. That defense is stacked for the Sailors this year, and he had moments where he looked pretty darn good in this one. So this is a good week for him to really have a chance to put up big numbers, I think.
It's incredible what the Sailors have brought back. It really is. All right, that brings it back to me. And I'm going to go into the receiver room again. I'm going to close out my board, and I'm going to go with JT Reel out of Hingham. Um, he's sensational. He's super, super talented. Obviously, great bloodlines. His sisters, both absolute stud soccer players. He's a fantastic athlete in his own right. They're going up against Abington this week. We saw, in week one against a really good passing offense, Abington, gave some points up. I think Abington's great. I think they've got a good defense, but I think that Jake Varholic and JT Real are going to be able to connect and make some plays against Abington this week. So I love JT Real this week. All right, Johnny, back to you.
Yeah, he was a guy that I had my eye on. I think I'm going to go back to that Duxbury Hanover matchup that Brennan had mentioned. I do think that's going to be a bit of a shootout. I think those are two offenses that are kind of ready to go and kind of make a statement this week. I'm going to go Nate Reed. So I'm going to stay on the Duxbury side of the ball, and I'm going to Nate Reed, guy that Brady Rhinesmith is going to go to. He's going to go to him a lot. And if they're going to beat Hanover and kind of get off the schneid here in week three, they're going to need him to have a big game.
It's pick your poison, right? I think that they're the wide receiver room for Duxbury is a tough room in that there's so many guys that can get it done, but they also do a good job of spreading the ball around, and so I think Nate Reed is just as likely as anybody there to have a big game. So I think a good pick for you, Johnny. All right, Brennan, close out round four.
I'm going to go back to the running back pool, I think. And this is kind of I don't know if it's a risky pick, but I think it's a good one for Carver this week. I'm going to go with Tegan Zakruski, if I'm pronouncing that correct.
You are.
They're playing Chelsea. Chelsea has had its struggles in its past. They're coming off a win. I'll give them credit there. Very tight one, though. And it was against an average opponent. So I think Zakruski's in line to put up some numbers this week, and Carver's going to need him.
Carver needs a win. Carver flat out needs a win. They're looking for their first under Demetrius Troy. Tegan is a stud, and this is kind of it's interesting because this is the class that Ben Shafane talked about when before he left Carver is like you think what I've got now is good. Wait for this class to come up. Tegan Zakruski's a big piece of that. He's super super talented. I think they've got a good matchup as you said this week, Brennan. It's an important week for them to get going. They need to win big, or need to win badly, I should say. So I think he has a big game for them. All right, round five. I'm going to close out my running back room. Give me Max Arnold out of Plymouth South. I think Whitman Hanson's defense has struggled a little bit in the early going here, and Max Arnold has been big for the Panthers, so I like him to have a big game for them this week. So give me Max Arnold. All right, Johnny.
I believe I need a running back. I'm gonna go with one of the better names on the South Shore. I'm gonna go Marvelous Pleasant from Rockland, at Blue Hills. I think that's a favorable matchup for them. I think he's a guy that is gonna get it going in week three, and they're gonna rely on him.
Perhaps the best name on the South Shore. It'd be hard to get better than Marvelous Pleasant. I mean, we've got a Wildfire on the South Shore. I mean, there are some good ones for certain. But Marvelous Pleasant, that's just fantastic. Yeah, I mean Blue Hills is has struggled out of the gate against some good opponents, and I think this is going to be a good litmus test for really where Rockland is. Big win for them week one. After a tough season last year, just come right out and get that first win off on the books. Can they build on it? Can they go out and beat a traditionally pretty tough Blue Hills team? We'll see, but that Pleasant is going to get his touches. So, all right, Brendan, close out round five.
I'm going to close out my wide receiving pool here, and I'm going to go with Will Wood's other target in this Everett matchup against Zavarian. I'm going to go with Christian McIntyre. I feel like they're going to have to air the ball out in this one. Everett is off to its hottest start in quite some time. Is the tide coming back? I don't know. We'll see. But I think it's going to be time for Zavarian to shine in this one.
Well, the tide always ebbs and flows. Yeah, I think that we talked about all that we talked about with Dave Schiavato earlier. They are going to go to the air in this matchup. They're going to need to, and they're going to spread it around. I mean, they've got a lot of legit targets, so I expect Christian McIntyre to be right there with Dave, having a big game. All right, round six. We all need a defense. I'm going to lead things off, and boy, I'm tempted to do it. No, you know what? All right. I had four defenses I was looking at, and somebody from each one of these teams has come off the board. So I don't feel like I need to mix anybody in. So I'm going to go with Middleborough. I just think, Rockland held DY to 8 points last week. I think Middleborough's defense is very solid. I think they're going to be able to limit the damage as well. So give me the Middleborough D. Johnny.
I'm gonna go to North Quincy. I think that's much more of a matchup. Braintree's offense just hasn't gotten it going early. So they might week three, but I think it's just a numbers game. So I'm gonna go North Quincy.
Yeah, right. It's the the question becomes Braintree hasn't scored a point. So do you bet against a team that still hasn't put up a point, or is it like, well, at some point they're going to score? I think Braintree's probably in for a tough game again. So I like the pick for you, Johnny. And Brendan, close out the board.
Well, the reason I was looking at Dewhurst earlier was because I like their matchup with East Bridgewater against Nauset, so I'm going to go with East Bridgewater this week. I just feel like this is their chance to have kind of a breakout game after kind of eking the two good wins out in the first 2 weeks. Nauset, as I mentioned, they're struggling right now, so this is their time.
Yeah, that's three of the four defenses I had written down just came off the board. I think EB is a great pick. I think Nauset's a favorable matchup for them. And I think the Vikings defense makes a statement. So fantastic. Right through. Let's take a look at the board. Out of the first slot, I had Anthony Pinto out of Pembroke as my quarterback. My running backs are Max Arnold out of Plymouth South and Austin Dewhurst out of East Bridgewater. My wide receivers are Wyatt Goyette out of Middleborough and JT Real out of Hingham. Johnny out of the second slot. Abe Cornett out of Randolph. I'm sorry. And I had the Middleborough defense. Johnny had Abe Cornett as his quarterback out of Randolph. Running backs, Nolan Dickinson out of Silver Lake and Marvelous Pleasant out of Rockland. Wide receivers, Nate Reed out of Duxbury and Dave Schiavato out of Savarian with the North Quincy defense. And Brendan, your quarterback is Brady Rhinesmith out of Duxbury. Your running backs are Tyler Gardner-Harris out of Archies, Tegan Zakruski out of Carver. Your wide receivers, Christian McIntyre out of Savarian and Eric DeLima out of North Quincy with the East Bridgewater defense. That'll do it for us for the Week 3 draft. Friday night, we are in Scituate. Sailors taking on Norwell in your South Shore game of the week. And then we're back at it on Saturday. 4:30 start time on 95.9 WATD. We'll have Quincy versus Stoughton, a little high school Saturday on the WATD Sports Network. So stay tuned for all of that. while you're here, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And we got plenty of content all season long for you. For Brennan and Johnny, I'm Quinn. We'll see you next time on the WATD Fantasy Draft.